It's a day that will live in infamy forever. I was sitting down at home when the first footage began to stream in. Hamas fighters dressed in all black on the back of a pickup truck near Sderot in southern Israel on October 7. Within minutes, I saw the first photographs of corpses. The first belonged to a bunch of elderly Jewish grandmothers massacred while waiting at a bus stop in southern Israel. I saw a lady who looked like my own Yaya, laying twisted on the ground in a sickeningly unnatural pose, her skull torn open by a gunshot wound, her grey hair matted in blood. More and more footage hit Twitter. With virtually no censorship post Elon, my entire feed was blanketed wall to wall with live Hamas body camera footage. I watched jihadist militants go door to door through kibbutzim, executing entire families. There were piles of dead Jews in tiny rooms painted with their own blood, having been herded into these makeshift death chambers like cattle before being shot. I saw dozens of corpses strewn in the dirt at Nova Music Festival, piles and piles of bodies twisted in the dust. Hamas fighters even executed a disabled, wheelchair-bound young girl with muscular dystrophy who had been attending the festival with her father. She could not even hurt a fly, and yet they executed her in cold blood. So I knew what was happening from the very start. I knew that this was an absolutely heinous massacre. I watched it unfold before me live. I knew exactly what Hamas had done. I knew exactly what they were doing live. And yet I watched my progressive friends celebrate. These people were my friends. I'd known them for years. I had broken bread with them, attended class with them, gone to protests with them. They were completely normal people who would absolutely abhor violence in day-to-day life. Yet their immediate response to this massacre was joy. I watched people I previously admired take to social media to celebrate. A young Australian progressive feminist leader and Rhodes Scholar named Yasmin Poole immediately posted, "Do you support decolonization as an abstract academic theory or as a tangible event?" She was an official spokesperson for the Pro-Indigenous Voice campaign, and she'd received international awards from the Martin Luther King Center. Apparently, she thought a massacre of hundreds of people our age by terrorists constituted a great moment of inspiration. This was the general mood among progressives that day, almost delirious, giddy joy. Dozens upon dozens of progressive girls I knew from university took to Instagram to proclaim their allegiance to the so-called resistance. A young Somali writer for Teen Vogue in the US wrote an ultra-viral post which taunted those outraged by the terror. What did y'all think decolonization looked like? Vibes, papers, essays, losers? I saw several university friends share this to their Instagram stories that day. And I remember sitting there, just thinking about this, just ruminating on this massive world historic betrayal, this irreversible rupture in my progressive worldview. I juxtaposed the images I had seen, the piles of corpses and bodies that I saw at the Nova Music Festival, with the gloating, the celebrations, the joy, the corpses of murdered grandmothers at the bus stop, the photographs of dead pet dogs executed by Hamas fighters in family homes, and the charred corpses of people burned alive. In my mind, I juxtaposed the glee that self-described progressive feminists like Yasmin Poole displayed with the footage I saw showing Hamas terrorists parading the shattered, half-naked body of Shani Luke through the streets of Gaza on the back of a pickup truck. Shani's skull had been split open by a bullet wound. She was clearly dead. Her limbs were broken and shattered at sickening angles. It was a horrific display, something that would instinctively repulse any normal human being on a very deep and profound level. Yet I watched hundreds of joyous Palestinian men pile around this truck in celebration, some even leaning over the side to spit directly into the open wound on her skull. What I experienced on October 7 was horror. Pure, total, cosmic horror. An unbearable nightmare. And yet somehow, having watched the same massacre, self-described progressive friends of mine experienced something entirely different that day. Joy. Pure, unadulterated bliss at the sight of mass murder and pack rape. And there was simply no way for me to reconcile the gulf between our reactions. Everything I thought I believed about the world shattered at once. If you had asked me my stance prior to October 7, I probably would have described myself as a soft Palestine supporter. I'd even gone to a pro-Palestine rally in 2021. Now I was being asked to sign on to mass murder, door-to-door executions, sickening pack rape performed by leering jihadists. This was apparently the new purity test for progressive orthodoxy. It was not enough to simply support universal public healthcare. You had to sign on to Palestinian militants breaking Shani Luke's limbs and spitting into a gaping bullet wound on her skull. Straight away, my politics changed forever. My entire worldview changed forever. My progressive friends insisted that this is what decolonization looked like. Leaders in the Palestine movement made it clear that they wished to extend their theory of decolonization to the entire West. Nasser Mashni, one of the top leaders in the Palestine movement in Australia, made it clear that he intended to target each and every settler colony: Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the United States. Other Palestine activists in Australia made it exceptionally clear at their rallies. One leader screamed, "Just like Israel, Australia does not have a right to exist."
Just like Israel, Australia does not have a right to exist.
So my understanding of October 7 and this new movement began to crystallize. They showed us what they meant by decolonization on October 7, race war massacres against people they perceived to be white colonial settlers. Then they insisted that they would one day universalize these atrocities against Australia and every other Western country. So I realized that these people wanted to kill me and my family, and that they would celebrate should my loved ones ever find themselves broken on the pavement at the hands of Islamist extremists in the name of decolonization. If this is what decolonization looked like, I resolved that I would simply oppose it forever, until the day that I fucking died. I'll never be able to get the horror out of my mind. The things that I saw that day will haunt me forever. Palestinian men wearing civilian clothes filmed themselves attempting to behead a Thai migrant worker with a garden hoe while screaming Allahu Akbar. Hamas fighters then executed a random Tanzanian international student. They stomped on his corpse and took photographs stomping on his lifeless head. One Australian Hamas supporter defended the execution of the Tanzanian on the grounds that it would send a message to foreigners. The New York Times then reported the grim news that first responders found the corpses of multiple dead women with their legs spread and underwear missing, some with their hands tied by rope and zip ties. One Arab-Israeli volunteer medic testified to finding the corpse of an executed Israeli woman with her hands tied behind her back and her clothes ripped off. One dead woman was found tied to a tree naked. Other October 7 survivors testified to witnessing acts of extreme sexual violence involving the mutilation of victims. A United Nations report found reasonable grounds to believe that some Hamas fighters raped the corpses of Israeli women on October 7. When I publicly opposed this extreme violence and rape, I received multiple comments and replies gloating over the atrocities. Quote, "October 7 was a blessing. Many Jewish girls received their first orgasms." Later, another UN report would detail the sexual torture that female Israeli hostages endured at the hands of Hamas during their captivity in Gaza. The constant stream of atrocities was simply relentless. A New York Times investigation into the October 7 massacre in Beirut found the oldest victim was 88 and the youngest was less than a year old. The body of a naked teenager was found dead in the rubble. Hamas fighters even cut off the fingers of an 80-year-old Jewish man before they executed him. They took babies hostage and posed with the captured infants while holding machine guns. Famous left-wing commentator Hassan Piker later would say that this could potentially be justified because babies could be considered settler colonists too.
And there are baby settlers as well. But there are baby settlers as well. There are babies in the settlements.
Mother Adi Vital Kaplun was executed in front of her 3- and 4-year-old children. Hamas fighters then booby-trapped her corpse and hid it in her house, set to explode upon being encountered by first responders. She was not found for 3 days. Again, Hamas fighters took celebratory, gloating video footage with infant captives. A neighbor testified that the children of Adi were shot, crawling and crying after witnessing the execution of their mother. The young infant had a gunshot wound to his leg. What was the strategy here? The strategy behind this otherwise senseless, soul-shattering mass murder? I think on one level, Hamas truly believed that they would destroy Israel on October 7. They were so ideologically committed to this insane idea that they held conferences in Gaza leading up to October 7, detailing plans for keeping Israeli Jewish engineers and doctors enslaved in a future Arab-Palestinian ethno-state as reparations post the destruction of Israel. Quote, "Educated Jews and experts in the areas of medicine, engineering, technology, and civilian and military industry should not be allowed to leave." To this end, I think they hoped that the brutality and genocidal ferocity of their attack would simply terrorize the perfidious Yehud into fleeing their homes and decamping to Brooklyn en masse. This was, of course, Nasrallah's retarded spiderweb theory, the notion that with simply enough killing and bloodshed, the Yehud would simply decide to give up and voluntarily submit to the sword. You still hear this retarded idea repeated frequently by Islamists all across the world, including by one woman at October 7 celebration rallies in Britain in 2025. Quote, "I think freedom will be achieved when the Israelis go back to where they were born, which is probably America, Poland, whatever."
I think freedom will be achieved when the Israelis go back to where they were born, which is probably America, Poland, whatever.
Without any real knowledge or understanding of Israeli society, the fact that more than half of Jewish Israelis descend not from Europe, but from Muslim countries in the Middle East and North Africa, which ethnically cleansed their families, all they had was this desperate hope that with enough rape and mass murder, the Jews would simply give up and just all flee to Brooklyn. So they tried terror. They tried total terror and horror. Security camera footage showed Hamas fighters stopping to methodically behead the corpses of murdered Jews outside a kibbutz on October 7. Stopping amid battle to methodically behead the corpses of murdered civilians makes no sense from a military perspective. It only makes sense if your entire strategy is predicated on mass terror. It's something very few people in the West understand. Try to inhabit for a second the moral universe and psychology of a Hamas soldier stopping mid-battle to methodically behead the corpses of murdered civilians. Try to inhabit the moral universe and psychology of the Hamas soldier who called his parents mid-massacre to inform them with great pride and joy that he had murdered Jews with his own hands. Quote, "Look how many I killed with my own hands. Your son killed Jews." Try to inhabit the moral universe of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh as he demanded the mass killing of his own people so as to harden the resolve of his soldiers. Quote, "The blood of the women, children, and elderly, we are the ones who need this blood, so it awakens within us the revolutionary spirit, so it awakens within us resolve." You can't. It is simply impossible for us to understand them, which is why Western progressives simply ignored the actual ideology of Hamas and instead project their own abstract values onto them. Ismail Haniyeh must be fighting for public healthcare, transgender rights, third world liberation. There can be no queer liberation without a free Palestine, blah, blah, fucking blah, blah, blah. All very nice stories that neglect to take into account the very real fact that he took to Arab television after October 7 to demand the mass murder of Palestinian children so as to boost the morale of his own warfighters. I have never seen a Western leftist try for even a single second to come to grips with the true ideological insanity of Hamas. I've never seen them try to justify Haniyeh calling for the mass murder of Palestinian children to boost the morale of his own fighters. I've never even seen them try because it's impossible. It's literally the politics of collective suicide. It's Jonestown politics. And look, at least some of the most extreme Western leftists understand this part, the insistence on personal and collective suicide. Feral leftist DC Comics author Gretchen Felker Martin responded to the massacre by declaring that she would support the right of Native Americans to form their own Hamas-style organization and hunt her down and brutally kill her. For her, this was simply the historical burden that all white people had to carry from birth as the descendants of colonizers. It's original sin without any prospect of spiritual redemption other than having your own head sawn off by a jihadist. And look, I decided after October 7 that I personally opposed the concept of having my own head sawn off by third worldist jihadists. This is actually the stand I chose to make. I oppose the idea that everybody I love should have their heads sawn off, beheaded by raving jihadists in the name of decolonization. I oppose it. I actually oppose it. I don't want my own mum to get beheaded by jihadists. Wow, shocking. Unlike some of these drug-addled, depressed communists like Gretchen who are literally borderline suicidal, I'm actually somebody who enjoys being alive. I love life. So I don't personally yearn to bare my own neck to the executioner's blade as some kind of penance for having been born as a Westerner in a first world country. That's just not on my agenda. That's not something that I wake up and think, that's something I want to do. I don't want to actually place my neck on the executioner's block and just call for a Hamas jihadist to just chop my head off for the crime of having been born white. Sorry, I don't want that actually. I decided I'm actually a philosophical conservative because I like my country, I like my culture, I like my civilization, I like life. I don't hate myself. I don't crave my own oblivion and destruction. This deep yearning for personal and collective suicide and self-destruction is actually this really deep core psychological driver for a huge section of the radical left in the West. And it's just utterly foreign to me because I don't want to die. I love life. These people, they genuinely crave mass violence. October 7 taught me that all these far left decolonial talking points targeting countries like Australia as inherently genocidal settler colonies, it's blood libel meant to justify terrorist violence and destroy liberalism and democracy and Western civilization more broadly. It's blood libel designed to prepare the road for genocide against the West. Our culture, our way of life, our civilization, our loved ones, they wish to heap everything we love onto the bonfire and destroy it. They don't share our morality. Nothing we love has any value to them. We saw what the decolonization looked like on October 7th, and it was demonic. It was satanic. And ultimately, here's the thing. If you spent the past 24 months cheering on rape and murder and mass killings while promising the entire time that your most ardent desire was to extend this bloodshed to Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the US, all these white Western settler colonies, guess what? We're fucking enemies. We're fucking enemies. It's as simple as that. I refuse to meekly go to my grave and offer my neck to the executioner's blade like Gretchen and the other mentally ill communists like Greta Thunberg. I'm not going quietly. I choose Western civilization over barbaric jihadism and suicidal third worldist race communism and pack rape. And like the Israelis, I choose to fight rather than roll over and fucking die. I will spend the rest of my life opposing these people to the day that I fucking die.